Hey, it's Roy Newgate, and today I wanted to discuss a topic that we have very limited information on, but one that I wanted to take the time to express my own thoughts on, as well as get your opinion on the subject. But before we get to that, if you are a returning viewer, or if you just generally enjoy One Piece content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell to stay posted on all of my video releases. That aside, let's get right into it. I wanted to talk a bit about Black Blades in One Piece, and specifically Enma and its potential to become one. Now, when it comes to Black Blades, we only know of two in the story so far, and that is Yoru, belonging to the current strongest swordsman, Dracula Mihawk, and the other is Shusui, which once belonged to the sword god Ryuma, and has since traded hands as it was wielded by Zoro beginning in Thriller Bark, but has since been returned to Wano in exchange for Enma. When Zoro first used his sword himself, he pointed out that hardness is one of the special characteristics of a Black Blade, which would imply it has several unique attributes to separate it from other blades. With this attribute of durability in particular, though, it specified that it would not bend even if a dinosaur stepped on it. So I'm wondering, does this mean that a black blade is indestructible or something like that once it's been forged? I honestly can't say for sure, but there's a bunch of hypotheticals we can paint in an attempt to answer this question. Shusui itself is one of the 21 great swords alongside Enma and Wado Ichimonji, and yet when Zoro fought Ryuma wielding a sword of similar rank to one of his own, he expressed concern that both of his swords could break if the fight goes on for too long. So it would appear looking on the surface that this moment is being used to emphasize that Black Blades are in an entirely different league. And then later on Zoro even remarks that the slashing attack power is stronger than before. It also combined the slashes of his other swords in its attack as well. Now, there may be a question on whether this is an inherent ability of a Black Blade and one of its unique characteristics, or if this one in particular is native to Shusui. This would be especially interesting because Ryuma himself was a one-sword style swordsman. Whatever the case may be, I don't think anyone can deny how important forging a Black Blade is for a swordsman to reach the peak of his ability. The main thing that we are trying to figure out though is how they are forged. It's a very challenging question to answer, but so far in the story, we've been given a small but significant hint. In chapter 937, when Gyukimaru was talking to Zoro about Ryuma and Shusui, he pointed out the fact that it was forged through his history of battle. So this added to the list of growing questions as much as it helped to paint a picture for us. So you have to wonder, what exactly did he mean by this? Was it the number of battles Ryuma fought? Was it the level of the battles? Was it the opponents? Perhaps it was his level of armament haki mastery. Before Zoro was interrupted in this conversation, he referred back to its black color, which for me confirms that it deals directly with armament. And of course, in the anime scene for this chapter as well, it's also shown that he is thinking back to the first time on screen that he imbued his blades in haki. But then the question comes up, why were Mihawk and Ryuma the only ones that we know of that have been able to forge black blades? Why doesn't Roger have one? Or Whitebeard? Or even Rayleigh and Shanks? Most will look at this as inconsequential or insignificant, mainly because the idea that Mihawk and Ryuma were better at an aspect of combat, or had an edge on some of the biggest names in the series, is pretty north of asinine to them. Personally, I'm not one to assume that these individuals didn't possess black blades simply because they didn't want one. I think it's telling us that they were altogether unable to accomplish this feat within their lifetimes. Because why wouldn't an individual look to maximize their ability as a combatant by doing this? Why purposely hold yourself back? It could be the case where certain swordsmen or blade users are able to access a part of armament haki that is inaccessible to most others, such as how future sight is not something that every individual can use despite possessing observation haki, as well as the fact that observation haki in itself comes in many forms depending on the individual. Or maybe there's the other possibility that Mihawk and Ryuma have reached a level of this haki that almost no one else has. I'm very much open to the idea because Mihawk did say that any blade can become a black blade just like Yoru. And it just speaks on his talents as a combatant to be the only confirmed living person to have accomplished this feat. Getting back to Enma, Hitetsu pointed out that Oden was unable to forge a black blade out of the sword, but he believes that Zoro can do it. And Oden was no slouch. His portrayal is among some of the best in the series. So what is it that prompted Hitetsu to express such confidence in Zoro? Especially because he barely even knows him. Maybe there was something he noticed with Zoro's first attempt at wielding Enma that left him with this sort of impression. Initially, after reading this chapter, and for quite a while after that, I was under the assumption that Zoro would not turn Enma into a Black Blade until the very end of the series. I thought it would be crazy for him to do something like this so quickly. Though after having some conversations with some friends on this topic, I slowly realized that putting this sort of time constraint on something like this was a bit unwise given the nature of the story and how it treats its main characters. I mean, Luffy himself will be the Pirate King at age 19, surpassing every decades-long career of those before him. And usually when concepts like this are introduced, they are usually given their exposition and accomplished in the same arc. An example of which would be when Luffy learned Future Sight in Whole Cake Island. So as it stands, I firmly believe that Zoro will forge a Black Blade out of Enma by the end of this arc. It's also important because symbolically it wouldn't hold as much weight if he did it in Elbaf or even later down the road. Wano is where Enma has its greatest significance. One thing to me that is not so clear though is what grade Enma will be once it has been forged into a Black Blade. This is very confusing because Hitetsu stated that this would raise its rank. So does this mean it becomes a supreme grade? Or will it simply be a great grade Black Blade? Because then you start to wonder, was Yoru a great grade before it became black? Or has it always been a supreme grade? And what about Shusui? Was it a skillful grade beforehand? And what if Whitebeard's Bizento were to become black if it's already a supreme grade? All these questions though I'm sure will be answered by the end of this arc as well, indirectly by whatever happens with Enma. Earlier I mentioned that the durability of a Black Blade was one of its main characteristics, so this aspect has me wondering just how high the durability of a Black Blade goes once it has been forged. It could be the case that at the end of the series when Zoro inevitably fights Mihawk, that he has to prove he has surpassed him in every aspect by breaking Yoru. With how much he talks about how there is nothing he can't cut, it could be that the biggest hurdle in this regard will be his ability to do something like this. Although I'm not sure if something like this is even possible given the unnatural durability of Black Blades. But this will be a way for Zoro to return the favor from when Mihawk broke a pair of his swords the first time they fought all the way back in Baratie. And this was a time that he was absolutely defenseless against Mihawk. And by then I would imagine he could have 3 Black Blades forged himself to further cement himself as the strongest swordsman in the world. And perhaps of all time. But those are my thoughts on the matter. Tell me what you think though. How do you think Black Blades are forged, and do you think Enma will become one before Wano ends? Comment your thoughts down below, and also don't forget to subscribe and like the video as well.